Human Service and Aging Committee for Wednesday, April 5th, 2023. Calling the meeting order. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
As a reminder to all in attendance, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the county's YouTube page. Calling the roll, Ms. Conwell. Ms. Conwell is absent. Mr. Sweeney.
Present.
Ms. Stevens. Ms. Stevens is absent at the moment. Ms. Turner.
Present.
Mr. Miller.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Stevens is upstairs taking care of some business for her district, and she'll be down momentarily. Is there any public comment?
No, Mr. Chair, there's no public comment.
Okay, approval from the minutes, or of the minutes from March 22nd? Have a motion?
So moved.
Dale, are you seconding it?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're going to move to the matters referred to the committee, and we have a pretty packed agenda. I want everybody to be as thorough and informative as possible, but we're going to be as efficient as possible as well. So, Madam Clerk, please read the first one.
Resolution 2023-0076, awarding a total sum not to exceed $10,000 to Enterprise Community Partners Incorporated for the Infusing Lived Expertise into System-Level Housing Solutions Project from the District 9 ARPA Community Grant Fund.
Thank you very much. Come on up, and please introduce yourself and let us know what you're thinking.
Absolutely. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here today. I am Ayana Blue Donald, Vice President and Market Leader in Ohio for Enterprise Community Partners. Briefly, I talk fast, so I'll keep it quick.
I'll take your time.
I know
I
you
just
have a
wanted to
longer
frame
agenda.
it that way.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. For 30 years, Enterprise Ohio has been a leader in affordable housing development in Greater Cleveland. Here in Ohio, we shape new strategies to bring housing and financial stability to community residents with a focus on those with low income and others who have been historically marginalized. We create place-conscious, cross-sector collaborations that elevate the expertise of people with lived experience. Our work addresses chronic homelessness, affordable housing policy, economic mobility, and financial inclusion, as well as lead, safe housing, and racial equity. You may be familiar with some of our work, Housing First Initiative, Cuyahoga Earned Income Tax Credit, as we're in the middle of that. So if you have any of your constituents that need free tax preparation, send them our way. The County Housing Stakeholder Group, and more. Across many of our programs, we've been pleased to partner with Cuyahoga County throughout the years, including the Office of Homeless Services, Office of Reentry, and the Division of Jobs and Family Services. Our request here today, we're before you, is for operational needs to infuse lived expertise into system-level housing solutions. This request is for $10,000 over 2 years. I'm here today to present our request, just really to continue to support what we've been trying to do for the past couple of years to make sure that our leaders with lived experience are compensated for their participation in our committees to further our work. We believe that people really are experts, right, in their own lives and know what they best need to succeed. Enterprise is an adept and strategic convener, bringing together partners, government, and funding to solve complex issues like chronic homelessness, justice housing, and childhood lead poisoning. In recent years, we've worked to increasingly recruit and elevate the voices of people who have experienced these problems and creating the solutions to these problems. We call these people leaders with lived experience out of respect for their special skills they bring to our work. They are valued advisors with specific expertise and should be compensated as such. County funds, if awarded, will be redirected as hourly stipends to people who have been homeless or have experience with the criminal justice system, as payment for focus groups for their time, and also advising our housing programs as steering committee members across our programs. The primary programs will be justice-involved housing and income instability for people experiencing homelessness. I won't go into detail there, but just keeping in mind that we've partnered with these programs with Income Instability. Steering committee is co-chaired by Melissa Sirak at OHS and Paul Bounds at JFS. And the Justice Housing work, we work hand in hand with the Office of Reentry. That includes the implementation of a justice housing pilot in 2023. Any other questions? Ta-da.
Very good.
So we're happy to present that today and humble in our request for the $10,000 over 2 years.
Absolutely. It's ARPA money, District 9, and we are very thankful that you came. Your presentation is extraordinary, and the partnership with Enterprise Community Partners is evident for the work you've done with us.
Yes.
So, questions?
No questions, but I just wanted to make a comment.
please.
Thank you through the chair. Ms. Blue Donald, I want to thank you for the opportunity to allow the county to help provide safe and stable housing and giving us the opportunity to impact the economic advancement and upward mobility of this group of amazing people that are persevering and are tenacious and they want the help. So we're here to try to provide all that we can to you. So thank you again for this opportunity to serve. And I think this is an amazing project to support. And I ask for my colleagues' support.
Absolutely. Councilman Dale Miller, District 2.
So, Mr. Chairman, to the representative, how much would be a typical stipend for participation in a focus group? And would most participants receive the stipend only once, or would they receive it multiple times for participation in multiple events?
Through the chairman, to the councilman, so it depends. So we generally pay a living wage. So for instance, if you participate in a meeting that takes an hour, and perhaps it takes you an hour to prep, to read all the materials, et cetera, we pay you 2 hours at $30 an hour. So $30 an hour is what we consider our living wage. If there's just a specific focus group, like a group of people getting together to talk about a very specific issue, that's about $50 for participation in that focus group. So we try to, well, not try, we use the same amount across everyone. Generally speaking, if people aren't paid probably more than, $600 just based on how much they participate. And it depends on the level of work and activity that we're doing. So about $600 or so, give or take, participating in committee, like steering committee activities, but focus groups may be a little different. For instance, last year we conducted, as part of our justice housing work, focus groups at Norma Her, and had, people that, not residents per se, but people that are engaged at Norma Her participating. That was just a one-time event. So that would just be a one-time payment.
Thank you.
And over the 2 years, how many people do you expect to receive one or more stipends?
I would imagine, so what we try to do, I'll answer it a slightly different way and try to take a guesstimate. So at each steering committee, we try to have at least 20% of our members be leaders with lived experience. So sometimes it just depends on the amount of members that are on that steering committee. But roughly, there's about at least 10 people across, all of our committees that would be leaders with lived experience that would participate in this. And then with focus groups, of course, those aren't regular people. Sometimes they're just community members that participate, so those members would be a little bit more. Each focus group could range in how many people actually participate.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none, thank you very much.
Thank
We're going
you.
to second reading, and then we'll go to third reading, and then probably within 3 weeks, a month.
Okay. Thank you for this opportunity today. And through the chairman, thank you, Councilwoman, for your support, because so often at times in our funding for programs, et cetera, there's a little things like this that sometimes go overlooked by funders. Of course, people want to fund the big, exciting things, but just the really actual administrative work that needs to happen to keep people engaged and informed and making sure we're doing the right thing is really valuable and important. So thank you for your support.
Your Councilwoman Special. Thank you.
Thank you.
Second reading to the whole council. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Number 2, Madam
Resolution
Clerk.
2023-0085, authorizing an amendment to a contract with AmeriCab Transportation Incorporated for non-emergency transportation services for ambulatory Medicaid-eligible individuals in Cuyahoga County for the period March 1st, 2021 through February 28th, 2023, to extend the time period to February 29th, 2024, and for additional funds in the amount not to exceed $4 million.
Director, welcome as always.
Excuse me. Good afternoon. David Merriman on behalf of the Department of Health and Human Services. Councilman, I want to echo your statements earlier that I understand this is a full agenda. We have 6 more items to go. I know we have quite a few members of the public that are here representing their items. I want to make sure they all get a chance to come forward if called upon. So I'll ask each of them to please keep their remarks succinct and to the point so we can make sure we get through all of our business. Our first item is a contract that has come before the council on several occasions for the non-emergency transportation program. I'm going to invite Marcos Cortez up to speak, or his team up to speak a little bit about the details of the procurement and the contract. And given the extent of the agenda, I'm going to ask Marcos and the departments to present the majority of these items directly, just to keep the contracts moving through as quickly as possible.
Thank you very much, and we're familiar with this contract.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Marcos Cortez with Health and Human Services on behalf of Cuyahoga Jobs and Family Services. Again, this is a contract amendment with AmeriCab Transportation for the non-emergency transportation program. This service ensures that medically eligible residents are able to receive regular and appropriate medical treatments in order to improve or maintain their current level of health, achieve a longer life expectancy, and experience an improved quality of life. Specifically, they are to provide medical transportation for up to 600 clients and provide up to 2,000 trips to and from scheduled treatment appointments on a monthly basis. The trips will be scheduled 7 days a week, Monday through Sunday, 4:30 to midnight. Originally, this was procured off an RFP. We received 5 responses, and AmeriCab was the highest score. We are exercising an option year to continue to provide the services for our clients. We do have Rick Holliford, the general manager of AmeriCab, here, who could answer the questions related to programmatic details.
Thank you, Marcos. They've been doing a good job.
So this is more of a pass-through. So the money comes through us. It's a TANF-funded program. It comes through us and it goes out, the invoices come through our HHS fiscal. We do get reports on a regular basis the reports are that they're providing the services as required.
No, they're doing a good, from my perspective, when I get calls from my constituents, they're very satisfied with that. Council Miller, it's in your district. Do you know that? 137th.
Right? I do have one, which is that I received a call from a constituent on behalf of a person who is ambulatory but had needed some degree of assistance getting in and out of the cab, and as a result of this, when a change of service providers, a change of drivers took place, then his services were canceled, and I'm concerned about that, both in terms of the individual case and about service provision generally, and I'm asking whether we've made any progress in resolving that kind of situation.
Councilman, I'll invite Rick to come forward and speak to this matter as well, or someone from the department if necessary. But we did take your concerns directly to our customer service team to look into it. We understand that there is, as you said, there was a transition of drivers. A past driver had established a routine, and the new drivers were unable to maintain that routine. And I think your feedback was helpful for us to be able to give some direction to the contractor to say, we'd like you to do more. We'd ask you to do more assistance if possible. And understanding that AmeriCab has subcontractors they work with, and they have to go through a process of maintaining their workforce. And so, unfortunately, we're not able to guarantee a standard of care that has every driver that is going to be able to get out and provide the highest quality services that certain drivers will do. We do have common expectations, and I think we always want to achieve them. So I'll ask Rick to come forward and speak to it as well.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rick Holford with AmeriCab Transportation. I believe the particular issue you're speaking of, Mr. Miller, occurred when, like you said, we did have a driver change due to an issue with that, a route change or something like that. We do provide service for ambulatory individuals, and it has been intimated to our drivers that they are not to touch the clients or lift them or anything like that. That takes away from the ambulatory aspect. The driver that had been transporting that particular client was kind of holding out his arm to allow the client to grab onto it to step into the van. And the other driver, who was the replacement, took that "don't touch the client" to heart, which I'm very proud of him for listening. But he wouldn't stand there to allow the client to pull themselves up off of him. So at that point, it was determined that the client wasn't truly ambulatory since they did need some assistance. So we reached out to the county for advice through JFS, and I think the client was put on hold at that point or transferred to a different service because of the ambulatory aspect of the situation.
So, I just think that a little more flexibility would be better. You know, if I don't think that ambulatory should be interpreted so strictly that if a person needs a little bit of support to lean on, that they can't get that assistance.
I understand completely, and I'm in agreement with you.
Thank you. Good? Councilwoman, that's just part of the reality of your business. And compassion is what we want to be known for in Cuyahoga County. And if we can stay within the gray area and help, we'd appreciate that. And Councilman Millers was generally moved by this situation, and he's just advocating as he should. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none.
We'd like to request that this be approved on second reading suspension, if possible.
Absolutely. I have no problem with that. To my colleagues, I'm going to make a motion to pass it under second reading suspension. Is there a second?
So moved.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman. Ordinance, all in favors?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Ordinance number R2023-0085 is going to be recommended to the whole council to be passed under suspension, second reading suspension. Madam Clerk, would you call the third one?
Resolution 2023-0086, authorizing an amendment to a master contract with various providers for the Cuyahoga Options for Independent Living Services Program for the period July 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2022, to extend the time period to December 31st, 2023, to remove 2 providers, and for additional funds in the amount not to exceed $4,476,500.
Good
Very much.
afternoon. Good afternoon again. Marcos Cortez with Health and Human Services, this time on behalf of Senior and Adult Services. Again, this is a contract amendment with a master contract with 23 vendors for the Options program. Options provides in-home services to senior and adults with disabilities living in Cuyahoga County who need assistance with larger household chores, medical emergency response services, grab bar installation, homemaking assistance, home-delivered meals, and assistance with personal care and/or transportation for medical-related appointments. The overall goal of the Options program is to extend the amount of time a client is able to reside in the home before requiring more intensive services. So we have Natasha Petricola, the interim administrator for Senior and Adult Services here, Cynthia Mason and Darlene Wade, the program staff for this large master contract, who can provide more details related to the program itself. This was originally procured off an RFP. We intend on issuing another RFP later this year to begin in January 1st, 2024.
Thank you very much. So it's coming up soon for the next contract. We're just trying to get
Yes.
to the finish line.
So we've already started working on that RFP, so we want to get it out before the middle of the year because we do have 23 vendors. So we can be ready to go January 1st.
Good. So, and the 2 were removed for what reason?
I'll bring up the program staff, but my understanding is that they were not able to provide the services that we were asking them to provide.
The 2 removed from the contract
Excuse me, can you state your name for the record,
have
please?
gone out of business. Oh, I'm Cynthia Mason from the Options Program. And the two providers that were removed have gone out of business.
Thank you very much for answering the question. I just have 4, I forgot to start. Our chairwoman, the extraordinary Yvonne Conwell, the council person, is unavailable today. She has something that is very pressing on a personal note. She asked me to ask some questions. I got 4 prepared questions, and I don't know who's going to answer them. Let's try, these lovely ladies. This is rather intimidating. I should just fold. Why is this contract late, and are there any past due invoices that have not been paid? I think it's Marco. Oh, you got it. Come
Yeah,
on.
I've got it. Natasha Petrocola, interim administrator. So the 2022 contracts have all been paid. So we are completely done with those. So any delinquent billing has been addressed. Currently, we're waiting for this process to go full circle, and as soon as it moves through this process, we plan on ensuring that the providers are paid for this year. We've been working with a lot of different transition. This is a shared service model, as you know. We've had a lot of consumers complaining, as well as our providers, because it has impacted them. These are small businesses. It's very important that the county is diligent in paying our providers so
And
that they
timely.
can
It's all
provide,
about
and
timely.
timely, absolutely. So we meet monthly. We discuss this every month. We've been continuing to do that now for several months, where contracts, fiscal, and the DSAS team are all present in those meetings so that we can ensure this doesn't happen again.
Thank you. How do providers submit payments? Question mark. Monthly invoices?
They do.
Thank you.
So they submit.
Why are 2 agencies being removed? We already got that one. And lastly, has there been a decision on moving contract dates in order to accommodate payments at the end of the year during the contract decertification process?
I'll let them handle that, but there has
You-
been
you-
discussion.
You are awesome.
There has been discussion because we do recognize at the end of the year when the county closes down their books, and we have to wait until the next year until that's open so we can, finalize payments for the previous year. So we're looking at potentially extending all the contracts through March 31st. So that would give us some time to add the funding back once the budget is open, to be able to pay any outstanding invoices while we prepare the new contracts.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Can the record reflect that our vice president has joined us and committee
It's
member?
noted, thank you.
And thank you. I told everyone you were dealing with the district at you upstairs. That's what you do, better than nobody else. So, second reading?
Please.
Okay. Ordinance number R2023-0068 is being requested to be heard under second reading suspension. Do I have, I'll make a motion, second by Cheryl. All in favor?
Aye.
This will be moved forward to the full council for consideration in the next council meeting. Madam Clerk.
Resolution 2023-0087, making an award on requisition 8737 to Emerald Development and Economic Network Incorporated in the amount not to exceed $2,654,343 for diversion services in connection with alternative housing and related services and support for COVID recovery for the period January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2023.
Thank you very much, Director. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. So again, David Merriman on behalf of the Department of Health and Human Services. Unfortunately, I'm here representing Homeless Services with the office, with Erin Reardon from that office. Melissa Sirac experienced a death in her family, and she's had to be out of the office. And so unfortunately, Melissa is not here to present this item. Melissa, I think, has spent an inordinate amount of time getting to this point, and so I know it's very challenging for her not to be the one making this presentation. So I am going to invite Erin to come up to be able to speak on this as well as the next 2 items. And what I'd like to say, this and the next item. What I would like to say on this to begin is the Office of Homeless Services has shown exceptional leadership to bring together a series of plans to help us address homelessness, to really end homelessness in Cuyahoga County. And what you're going to see here is 2 significant investments of COVID-related funding that has come to the county. These are general funds, but we've still gone through the process to do procurement, to identify vendors, to identify partners. In the next 2 cases, one of the things that you're going to see is that our funding is going to leverage other funding. There's a capital stack, if you will. And the importance of that is that we've been in sustained negotiations to understand how these dollars come together. Both of these next 2 projects are presenting significant capital improvements in our community, for which we're very proud of. and will ultimately lead to some of the most significant transformation of homelessness in Cuyahoga County. So I'm going to ask Erin to come up. Okay, well, I'm going to ask her to come up when there's questions and that I can't answer on the specific services. And so on this first item, on the Joseph's Home item, and I know Beth Graham is here to speak on it as well. This is, I think, an important new alternative housing resource where Joseph's Home and now Mary's Home provides respite care for individuals that are homeless, that are experiencing significant medical issues. And, I'm on.
Still on Emerald?
I'm sorry, I'm on Eden. I'm on the wrong one. I'm on the first one. My apologies.
Are we on 87?
We're on 87. So Elaine Gimmel is going to come up in a second here. And Elaine is going to help refocus us on the first of the two Eden items. And that is, I think, going to be related to some of the work we're doing with the women's shelter and out in the community. So how about I stop there and I invite Elaine up. Probably should not have had them split, so that's on me.
Another team of 3.
Another team of 3. Good afternoon. My name's Elaine Gimmel. I'm the Executive Director of Eden Incorporated. And with me is Emma Petrie Barcelona, who's our Chief Operating Officer, and Richard Carr, who's our Director of Real Estate Development and Construction. So in regards to the first item, the 0087, this is for 4 different categories of assistance. And I think we had Melissa forwarded 2 PowerPoint presentations to you so that you had some background on this. And so we had responded to the RFQ that the Office of Homeless Services had. And so there's 4 different kind of pots of assistance that are part of this. One is for homeless prevention and diversion dollars, property owner or landlord incentive funds, housing location services, and then rapid rehousing extension. All 4 of these do fit into the new strategic plan for homelessness in Cuyahoga County. And so we had applied for the dollars and were awarded the funds. And so for the homeless prevention and diversion, we anticipate serving 600 households. This can be used for rent and utility arrearages, temporary hotel stays if people need them, if they're in between units, for housekeeping, and then household items. For the landlord incentives, these are to help us recruit and retain landlords for the rental assistance programs that we administer. Again, this can be for security deposits, unit hold fees. So if a landlord's willing to hold a unit for somebody as they're going through the process of inspection, et cetera, we can use it for that. Refunds for eligible costs to pass unit inspections, rent arrears that are not paid by the subsidy, and then costs for tenant damages. For the rapid rehousing extension, it is specifically targeting survivors of domestic violence. We have a rapid rehousing grant currently. We anticipated 6 months of assistance. What has formulated in our rapid rehousing is that people need 12 months of assistance. And so this will allow us to provide the 12 months of assistance for those domestic violence households, as well as for people coming from reentry. Again, providing 12 months of assistance. And then for housing location, we will be working with Legal Aid with their Right to Counsel program, Northeast Ohio Coalition for the Homeless, and then Department of Children and Family Services to help their clients find units or apply for affordable housing as well.
Very succinct. Thank you very much. The one question from our illustrious chairperson is, are these funds used towards hotel diversion for those who test positive for COVID? And when will these emergency services?
So that is not who we've targeted for the hotel stays. It has been for people that are in our rental assistance programs that if their unit fails and they need to move out of a unit immediately because of the conditions, we would put them in a hotel until they can get into another unit.
Yeah, if COVID becomes part of the process, what happens?
I
They just deal with it as any other person. They quarantine themselves and.
Yeah, I think we would be open to using that for COVID if necessary, but it wasn't the main focus of what we were considering for hotel stays.
Thank you. I'm good. Uh-oh, here comes the director.
Again, David Merriman, I do want to just acknowledge that our designated COVID services have wound down. We don't have COVID hotels. We don't have designated COVID resources anymore. So I think right now what the advice we've been given and what we've shared with our providers is this has to become part of your standard of care. The same way that if you had someone test positive for another infectious disease, we have to just manage it. We have to look at it on a case-by-case basis, see what resources are available at that time and act. We can't really count on there being a special COVID discharge unit anymore.
Thank you very much for that very specific,
Mr. Chairman,
clarified answer.
could we have a little more detail on that?
Oh, absolutely. I'm just,
So give us an example. Hep C is contagious, right?
That's right.
So what do you do when somebody tests positive for that?
Well, I mean, I'll ask them I'll ask the rest of the Eden team to speak on this as well. But I think the first thing is we talk to their provider. We have the client talk to their medical provider to understand what's the right medical treatment that person needs. In some situations, I can't speak to Hep C, but I can say in some situations they're going to say stay in your room or give them an isolation room. And some of our shelters have isolation rooms that allow for that. Some don't. That's a part of the reason we're making many of the changes you're going to see. 2 items, the one I thought I was speaking on, that really start to talk about less congregate care, less congregate settings, more individualized rooms, and then more structure within the shelters for us to be able to accommodate an illness like that.
So how many shelters do we have now?
I'm going to do the quick math. This is where I'm going to call on Erin to do the math as she walks up. I'm just going to name them. So we have Norma Hare, we have 2100, we have Salvation Army, Harbor Light. I know there.
Westside Catholic Center. I'm trying to think. Family Promise. That might be it. Oh, yeah, sorry, Journey Center.
This is the moment that I wish Melissa had been here. She would have named the
So,
number and the names.
I had 7 or 8 in my head.
We're about there.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I do want to acknowledge that there are other shelters in the community that are not funded by us, that provide services that are also part of our network. They're partners, but they're not our shelters, if you will.
Okay. So 2100 is the one I'm most familiar with.
Mhm.
Do we have rooms for isolation there?
I don't believe so.
Reardon, Office of Homeless Services. As far as I know, they don't have a large block of rooms for isolation. I think they have the capacity to isolate individuals, but just kind of as it arises, and especially because it's become more endemic than pandemic.
Right, but we're seeing, for example, what they're calling long COVID, which can sometimes be, depending on the person, contagious. And so the question is, none of us have all the answers. If we did, we wouldn't be sitting here. But we are all working toward finding the best answers we can for the people we collectively serve. So do at least some of our facilities have single rooms where people can be isolated as their doctors are evaluating what should be done for them?
Since right now they are a congregate shelter, they wouldn't necessarily have single rooms, but they would have some kind of space where they would be able to isolate.
Okay, that doesn't really, if it's open, putting a curtain up isn't real isolation to me as a non-practitioner.
Yeah, my understanding is, I know of at least one shelter that has isolation rooms. If I can ask Melissa to speak on this
That's
and
fine.
just respond and let us.
So a follow-up to
let
us,
us
to
confirm.
the chair and to
That's
us,
right.
that would be great.
This is also, as I said, the big reason that we're talking about significant renovations to Norma Hare as well as to 2100 to give us the capacity to do exactly that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Dale A. Miller.
So, regarding the funding for the 2 Emerald items, is this out of the regular $240 million ARPA pot that we received, or is this ARPA money that's specifically designated for homelessness?
This is money that came to the county as a part of the $240 million ARPA money.
And regarding the first item, 23-87, what is the plan for how these services would be provided when the ARPA money is used up?
So I'll ask Elaine or Aaron to chime in as well on this, but I think this is become a common question, and part of what we're trying to accomplish is looking at if we can do a better job with our shelter environment and we can stabilize people, we will get people hopefully out of shelter quicker. There ultimately should be a better, more efficient use of our dollars. That being said, some of our diversion services are timed right now to the housing crisis that we're experiencing with the increased costs of rent and the challenges with affordability. So we are still seeing, I think, a COVID impact on our housing environment that we hope will stabilize over the next couple of years. If this becomes the new normal, that we have to actually look at having increased costs for diversion and some of the other housing supports, then we'll have to have a policy question about what we can sustain and what we can't. I don't know, Elaine, would you add anything to that?
Yeah. I would say that with the new strategic plan to end homelessness, I think we're looking at how do we bring in other resources beyond just public resources to help sustain some of these programs. I think also looking at our current programming to determine which could be utilized for some of these dollars if they were kind of reconfigured. So I think it's a matter of looking at what other resources are available, because I agree with David that I think COVID has changed our system altogether, and it is becoming, just for example, the property owner incentives, it's becoming harder and harder to find landlords to accept rental assistance. The rents are going up significantly in this area and nationally, and so trying to think about, how do we deal with that ongoing, because we don't think that this is going to be something that's going to go away in a few months. So again, we've been even looking at other resources to how do we sustain having these funds available so that we can get people housed, because we don't want to lose government dollars because we can't get people into housing and we're not spending those for rent assistance. So again, it's looking at what are other resources that are available, including can some of these grants change so that they could be able to help support some of these programs as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other questions? Hearing none. Do we have a request?
We do. Actually, this and the next two we would love to see passed on second reading suspension.
Well, I'll deal with this one first, and then we'll consider the other ones as we move forward.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we move forward with 0087 as expeditiously as possible.
Well, I'll second that.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Well, this passes. R 2023-0087 will move to the full council for second reading suspension. Madam Clerk.
Resolution 2023-0088, making an award on requisition 8737 to Joseph's Home in the amount not to exceed $605,000 for building rehabilitation and homeless prevention strategies in connection with alternative housing and related services and support for COVID recovery for the period January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2023.
Thank you very much. Who are you?
David Merriman, Department of Health and Human Services. This time I am actually here to talk about Joseph's Home. And this is, I'm joined by Beth Graham, and I'll invite Beth to come up in a second. But this is an important respite service that we've worked with for years. Joseph's Home provides a critical service that is otherwise not available in our community, and our grant will enable them to make some capital improvements. I also understand they are expanding their services to include women, and so I'm going to invite Beth up at this time to come and share more information about her project.
Welcome, Beth.
Hi, I'm Beth Graham. I'm the Executive Director of Joseph and Mary's Home, and you may notice the and Mary's Home added.
That's what I was going to ask.
And that is really a result of us expanding to serve women in another medical respite facility right next door. So we are a medical respite facility, and what that means is that we fill the gap between hospital and home for those who are unhoused with medical conditions that require recuperation. We were founded in 2000 by the Sisters of Charity of St. Augustine, who had been working the floors of St. Vincent Charity Medical Center at the time and saw people returning again and again following hospitalization. And they discovered that the root cause was homelessness because their patients really had nowhere to rest, recuperate, get connected to the housing and supports they needed to take their medication. And so their dream was to found Joseph's Home, and they did. And then in March of 2022, we opened Mary's Home to really realize their full dream. And as of September, we are now known as Joseph and Mary's Home. All of the residents that we serve are experiencing homelessness and have acute medical conditions that require ongoing care. So typical residents are recovering from surgery, going through cancer treatment, may have serious chronic conditions that require stabilization, like end-stage renal disease, lung issues that require oxygen, the kinds of things that really can't be supported in a more congregate setting. Referrals come from all of the hospital systems. They can come from shelters. They can come from other partners in the community and do. 60% of those we serve are over the age of 55, 60% are African American, 12% are veterans, 80% have a physical or mental health disability, 97% have a chronic health condition, 4% diagnosed with HIV/AIDS, an average annual income of under $10,000. So the project that we've proposed is to renovate a space. Our building opened in 2000. It was a former convent built in the late 1940s. And while, we're really proud that it served its purpose for so long, 22 years later, it is really not. As I just read some of those statistics, you probably get the sense of the people that we serve. And the people that we serve often have wheelchairs, walkers, canes. They may have vision or hearing impairments. And our building, as lovingly as we want to talk about it, has a lot of limitations. And so when last year we opened Mary's Home, we really used the experience of Joseph's Home to inform that design. And we have found in operating it for a year that we really needed to move forward with something for Joseph's Home. And what we're fortunate to have happen is that the front half of the building where Mary's Home is located became vacant. And so our proposed project is to renovate that one-story space that is wide open and able to be easily reconfigured for purposes of actually moving Joseph's Home out of the former convent building and into that space. It allows for just 100% accessibility. It addresses some of the limitations that Joseph's Home had in terms of the things that we've already been hearing talked about. Joseph's Home, the original Joseph's Home had congregate restrooms, for example. This proposed space will not. And like Joseph's Home and like Mary's Home, we'll have all private rooms for the people that we serve. The total project cost is $1.8 million. The balance of the funds, as David mentioned, come from a variety of other sources, foundations, our own capital reserve, and we expect that we'll be able to start renovations in the fall of this year to be able to move Joseph's Home into the renovated space by the end of June 2024. I did provide some things in writing in case there are any other questions.
Thank you for that, very succinct and eye-opening. You painted a nice picture for my mind. And when you said all the different, and I thought of some people have the air tanks too. They all, it's the folks that need it the most, and your mission is beautiful, actually. Just on a technical, do we need to amend the legislation to change it from Joseph Home to Joseph and Mary Home?
Our legal name has not changed. It's just our doing business as name that has changed, but I can provide that information.
Yeah, so the enterprise is still, for legal purposes, the Joseph Home. Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you. The two questions we have from our illustrious chairperson. How much of this funding will go directly towards renovation costs, and how will the dollars be dispersed?
So all $605,000 is for the hard renovation costs of the facility. And so, the way in which the funds will be dispersed, first of all, we'll follow the contractual guidelines of Cuyahoga County, but the way that the project will function will be similar to any other construction project in that Regency Construction is the general contractor. HDS Architects is the architectural firm. They will submit draw requests. The architect will sign off on them and will disperse the funds.
Thank you very much. And the second one is, can you provide an example of patient expenses that are not covered under Medicaid? That's a trick question. I think she threw that one in just for you.
So our organization does not bill Medicaid for any expenses. So the people that we serve them through the generous support of Cuyahoga County, through support from the City of Cleveland, the State of Ohio, and from foundations and individual donations.
Thank you. So Medicaid is not part of your process?
Not part of our expenses. Certainly, the people we serve receive Medicaid,
But
and
for your purposes?
But for our purpose, we do not get that reimbursement.
Thank you very much. Questions from the committee members?
Mr. Chairman?
I'm going to, ladies first, so you don't mind?
Okay, fine.
Sorry about that. I always look to my right. So, Madam Vice President?
The first question asks you about what our funds would be spent for. What is the total project cost?
The total project cost is $1.8 million.
So we're about a third of what you need to make this happen. So we're being leveraged significantly. That's fabulous. And the architectural and engineering costs, were they included in that 1.8 or were they done separately?
No, that's included.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Dale A. Miller, District 2.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And what is the current capacity of Joseph's home, and will it change after the renovation?
The current capacity is 11 private rooms at the existing Joseph's home, and that will be unchanged in the new space, just better laid out.
And what is the current capacity of Mary's home?
10 private rooms.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Keep up the extraordinary work. And would this be a second reading? Yes, right?
Yes, it would. Again, I think this is a critical project that we want to see it get off the ground and have the services open as soon as possible.
Yeah, I know you said it, but I just want to have you say it a second time.
Fair point.
So, is there a motion to have?
There's a motion on the floor from Ward 10.
District 10.
District
come
10,
on.
sorry.
I'm just
You can tell where I was today. So resolution asking for 0088, asking for $605,000 for the building rehabilitation. Hopefully it can be expedited.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Councilwoman Turner. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none. Ordinance number R2023-0088 will be forwarded to the council as a whole. Thank you very much. Awesome. Okay, Madam Clerk, we go to the next one.
Resolution 2023-0089, making an award on requisition 8737 to Emerald Development and Economic Network in the amount not to exceed $4,798,000 for building rehabilitation in connection with alternative housing and related services and support for COVID recovery for the period July 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2023.
Thank you. Director?
Again, this is a partnership between the county and Eden to run the Norma Her Women's Shelter. I'm going to invite Elaine and the team up again to present on this item. I do also just want to acknowledge, because there's times a little bit of confusion with Norma Hare. Eden owns the building. They are the owner of the facility that we use to serve homeless women. YWCA provides the on-site services, and so this is a partnership between the county, Eden, and the YWCA. But I'm going to invite Elaine and the team up again, because I think they'll want to share some information about the specifics of the Norma Hare renovation and what we're planning.
Thank you. Welcome back.
Thank you. Again, my name is Elaine Gimmel. I'm the Executive Director of Eden, and Richard Carr is the Director of Real Estate Development and Construction. So this particular grant is not only for the rehab and expansion of Norma Hare Women's Center, it's also for the construction of affordable housing units for homeless families. So there's two utilizations for these dollars. Eden, I'll focus on Norma Hare first. Eden acquired the property the 2219, 2227, which is the current Norma Hare Women's Center, in 2003. The city and the county had approached Eden about being the owner, and we agreed to do that. So we have been the owner of that property since that time. And as Director Merriman said, the YWCA is the operator on site. We have done 2 rounds of renovations at that particular property over the years. We've had to raise the funds both times for those 2 renovations. Our hope is that we will align the shelter with the Goal 2 of the Cuyahoga County Strategic Plan on Homelessness to improve the experience of persons in crisis housing, and the shelter is considered crisis housing. This redevelopment plan has been in process since 2021. Eden has been working with the YWCA, Cuyahoga County, and the City of Cleveland. Our hope is to redevelop the existing Norma Hare Women's Center to create non-congregate living, radically transforming the current facility from its current conditions. Right now, the capacity is 175. Our hope is to increase it to 203 beds. We hope to provide quality, dignified, and safe space at this property for the guests and staff moving forward. We are introducing trauma-informed design to the property, and what that means is that we want to have a calm, safe, and dignified space and not cause more stress for the guests that are residing there. We hope to provide a secure, larger outdoor area for the guests. We also do have to consider relocation temporarily of the guests and the YWCA staff to a temporary space, complying with Uniform Relocation Act guidelines while the rehab and renovation is happening. We also hope to secure the necessary funding for this. Our project timeline is between 24 and 30 months. The footprint would be expanded from 24,000 square feet to 51,000 square feet. We would accommodate 203 individual beds, no bunk beds. We used bunk beds before, and there are many, many people with mobility impairments, and bunk beds are not easy for people to get into, so they will be single beds. It will include more space for operations staff, meaning the YW. We will have fully accessible rooms for guests with significant health and mobility issues. So as we're talking about COVID, the majority of the rooms would be for single individuals, and the ones that would be shared by 2 guests only. So there would be no more than 2 guests per room. We also, this will have more easy access for deliveries and increased storage space. There would be adequate space for dining and socialization. Right now, the dining room is very small for the number of women who are staying there, and this would provide adequate space. We would also have elevators in the buildings, which would be helpful because right now we just have a wheelchair lift in the current building that exists. And then we would also have generators that would be part of this because we have had electrical outages and we want to make sure that the shelter could operate at full capacity if something happened. I know that we had provided, I think, some sketches and schematics to you ahead of time, so I don't know if you have any questions about that. This is a $21 million project, and we are, for these purposes, this would be 2.998 that would be part of the funds that we're talking about today to go toward that 21 million. And Richard, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Richard Carr, Director of Real Estate Development and Construction. Thank you very much for allowing us to come up today. The capital stack is well leveraged with county money. There's a significant amount of money that's being brought in by the City of Cleveland. We also received an award from Federal Home Loan Bank of Cincinnati for capital funds for the project, so that the county's $2.9 million is well leveraged against the $21.6 million total development cost. I know that some of the things that were talked about earlier about isolation rooms, there is specific isolation rooms in the design going forward in case someone does have an outbreak of Hep C or some other type of infectious disease where they can isolate away from everybody that's in the building. So that is part of the design. And as Elaine said, we are bringing in handicap units specifically for mobility impaired. Each of the beds will contain a separate shower that the guests will be able to take a shower in. So we're providing at least almost 1 shower per bed in the new design. The design is very attractive. We have gone through city planning on both the renovations for the existing Norma Hare facility as well as the expansion space. We have gone through landmarks. We have a building permit for one of the buildings. We're eminent on a building permit for the other building. So we are truly excited about this project moving forward. In addition to that, we also embarked on a family housing initiative to provide housing for homeless families. We have 3 projects that we are involved with: Expansion Phase 1, Expansion Phase 2, and Expansion Phase 3. Our expansion phase 1 is currently operational. It's housing 7 families in the homeless system. They consist of 2 and 3 bedroom apartments. They are absolutely stunning. The PowerPoint presentation that you have shows a picture of the building. Phase 2 is eminently going to start construction. That project is also well leveraged with other funding sources, including the Ohio Housing Finance Agency, as well as the city of Cleveland. And the last project is an expansion phase 3, which is also designed to house homeless families, features 2 and 3 bedroom apartments. That will be a demolition of an existing building that Eden owns and reconstruction of a new building. We have also been through city planning on that project, have garnered all the city planning approvals. Once again, the county's money is well leveraged against the city of Cleveland's money for that. So, what that project is eminent.
Very, very, that's exciting, right?
I have a comment.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to ask the chairwoman's question so she doesn't yell at me for not doing it.
Because she's watching. No.
No, she's not. Sorry, try to bring a little levity to some very serious topics that do extraordinary good. So when will the renovations be completed?
Right now, we're looking at 2025, in the spring, March of 2025. And this is for Norma Herr. For the expansion projects, we're well along with those projects. Most likely, that last building will be placed in service by the end of 2024.
Thank you. How many beds will increase as a result of the reservation space? And from here,
It will go from 175 to 203.
28.
And that doesn't, if there would be the need for overflow like we have currently, that's not even included in that 203 number.
yeah, I did the math, and I think it's 28, 25 plus 3.
We did not file for tax credits. Yeah. We have city ARPA funds, we have the county ARPA funds, we have county home. Yeah. There is some sponsor equity in it, and then we have Federal Home Loan Bank of Cincinnati, which we'll be reapplying for this year for an additional $400,000, once again, to leverage the capital stack.
Good? Yeah, I just had one last one, and then we'll turn it to you. How long will these renovations help to maintain the overall building structure over time?
So
Get another 50 years out of it? 100?
Yeah, so I mean, because we understand the rigorous durability needs of the shelter. We are proposing like concrete floors that are pigmented and sealed. Yes, yeah.
100? Just give us a number.
I would say 50 anyway.
Good. Yeah, you're the expert in the room, so I would take that as.
And then on the mechanical systems, we're sitting at 2025 before they kind of end their useful life. But the building alone is at least 50 years.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Questions? We're going to go with our Vice President, Madam Vice President.
So I'm a little confused here. You said 2.9 million from us, but I see in the legislation 4.7.
Yeah, so the 4.7 includes not only Norma Herr, but the multifamily housing as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you very much. Councilman Dale A. Miller from District 2.
So, how and when did you acquire the additional space that you're using to make a large expansion in the square footage?
You want to talk about that, Elaine? Yeah.
So the current property that we have a commitment to keep that as shelter from the other funding sources that we've used over the years. And again, it's a great location. We're already there, and it's accessible for the guests that are staying there. So we were trying to look in the near vicinity if there were any available properties. And so there were 2 that we toured. This one, the owner was willing to sell, and so we purchased the property on East 23rd, right? Okay. And then there was a current tenant in there. There was a business, and we followed the Uniform Relocation Act, and they have relocated to another facility. So the building is empty and ready to start construction.
And when did that purchase take place?
That was August of last year.
And would you say some more about this process where residents are going to have to be temporarily relocated during construction? Would it be all of them, or would it be just some of them on a rotating basis? How is this going to work, and where will they be relocated?
So we are still working through that because we need to make sure that the space that we identify meets the qualifications for Uniform Relocation Act, and that it meets the needs of the guests as well as the YW's operations. And so we have a few potential sites currently, and we're just trying to finalize what would be available to move the guests to. And again, we're still working with the architect and the contractor to talk about the timing of that. And so it may be that we can just have to move half of the women, maybe not all of them, but again, we're working through those details right now.
And would this be into one or more vacant buildings, or would it be using existing other facilities?
For the relocation?
Yes.
It would be vacant buildings right now.
Okay. And regarding the bank financing for the women's shelter, was this a loan or a grant? And if a loan, what is the interest rate and the length of time?
So for the new project, we used our line of credit for that. I don't know what the interest rate is right now, but I could get you that information. What is it? 3.5%.
That's low in this
Yeah,
current
and
market.
you're right, and that helped us qualify for additional points with the Federal Home Loan Bank of Cincinnati to secure that particular grant.
Good. Any other questions? I got a couple, if you don't mind. The city support, how much is that?
The city's providing a couple tranches of funds. The first fund is about $4.8 million of CVESG and CARES Act funds. The second tranche is $4 million of home ARPA plus an additional $1.6 million of home ARPA. We applied for those funds in February of this year.
Thank you. You mentioned the place is brutal right now. And you guys, thank you for stepping up and basically being a partner here, dealing with a tremendous set of negative, heavy circumstances. The YMCA is part of it. I had the reality check of touring the place. There's folks that come down here and talk about it. It's overcrowded. It's physically affected me walking in that place. And this is the first time I'm having the opportunity to hear in depth your world. And you're getting a little beat up, and YMCA is getting a little beat up, the county, we're getting beat up. But there's hope. There's a light at the end of the tunnel kind of thing, right? So the capacity we can never build, know exactly how much. And you're not running the place. So you're going to build it to the best of your expertise, and then the YMCA will run it with the reality of the guests that are there. Director, you came up for a reason.
To your point, Councilman, I also want to acknowledge that the Vice President asked a great question about the housing and why is the item in front of you include both shelter and housing. I think it really speaks to you can't have an effective front door if you don't have an effective back door. I think what you're seeing is an enormous investment in our homeless shelter system here, but what you're also hearing is Ian's talking about investing in housing, and that has to be a part of every conversation. Part of the reason that we've come forward in this way when Melissa led this and when she put the RFP out, it wasn't just let's talk about improving the shelters. It's about let's address housing. And Eden had the ability to ask for funding for the shelter as well as other programs and services. And you've seen now 3, including the diversion. And you're starting to see how the entire continuum is being managed. Let's divert. Let's get people from coming into the shelter. Let's have a better, more humane shelter. And then ultimately, let's come up with some resources to have people leave shelter. And I think that's the vision you're seeing from Melissa Sirak and the Office of Homeless Services.
Well, Melissa's rock star is an understatement.
Yeah.
Dedicated public servant. Can you give our condolences to whatever her loss is? Because
I will.
She would be here because this is her.
I don't think there's another reason that she wouldn't have been here for.
Thank you. Just in the design that you have right now with the overflow, are you designing it to, this is how we have it with 203 beds, but if we have 412 people here, because right now when you walk in, you go to the first floor, the back room for the folks that need a little bit extra. I'm going where, this is pretty emotional. Then you go into the lunchroom, you got all the mattresses stacked up, and it doesn't seem like a perfect design to handle the overflow. So with your world, with the housing that you have described, 2 beds or 1 bed, an individual with a shower, do you have, talk about if overflow does occur, we're gonna flip this bed down or turn this table over or whatever, something like that?
A little bit about that. Yeah, so the lunchroom and the expansion space is generous. I'm going to guess that there might be room for maybe 100 guests at a shot, which means, and there's also space in there for computer lab for the guests to continue to explore capabilities outside of the homeless shelter to maybe get a job and get services. But that particular space would provide an ample supply of temporary mattresses.
And we can be hopeful.
Yes.
And hopefully they'll have excess space as we continue with this entire front door, back door, getting back to mainstream design game plan. Just the length of stay in a homeless shelter by the guests that are there. It has been told to me between 1 year is the average, maybe a little bit more. Who sets that policy on length of stay? Is that you? Is that the county? Is it the city? Is it YMCA? And if there's not one, are we going to contemplate doing that?
Right now, there's not a limit to how long somebody can stay, and I can turn it over to David to talk more about that. But it's a low barrier shelter, and so anybody who needs shelter, Cuyahoga County accepts into the the homeless system. So there are some people who are there possibly for 1 night. It could be 30 days, it can be a year, it can be a couple of years. So I think that just depending on the guest and what their limitations are, will determine what their length of stay is. People, do use it as a crisis housing option, but there are some people who have been there longer than maybe, what the average is. And there's, reasons probably for that. We have talked about limiting length of stay before, but it has never come to fruition. And again, I don't know if that's something you want to.
No, I think it is it's a critical question that I think as a community we need to address. As it stands right now, we don't have a restriction on the length of stay, and I don't want there to be an impression that that everyone is staying there for years at a time. There's also episodes. People are in for a period, they're out. Sometimes they come back. And at the end of the day, we want to present a hospitable environment, environment that really meets people's needs. And what you're seeing is an investment to hopefully have a more stable and a more dignified existence while you're there that will help people to leave. Our goal ultimately is to give them the time and the space they need to become stable so that they're going to be more amenable to housing and the services that are necessary. And I think this is going to be one of the first and most significant things we can do to help shorten the length of stay.
Thank you. But it's just, for me, it's, the key word was need.
Yeah.
And habitual, there's got to be a board or something, and you've tried it before, you never got there. Let's not quit trying, because it's not a large number. It doesn't really tip the scale all the way, but it does open up more space. And my last question is the exposure of Eden in regards to owning the building and possible and other options that the county and city go to. I asked that question last time. You own it, what's the, I want you to be protected as much as possible with all these dollars you're putting in. And I heard that there was no real contract that says you're gonna be our homeless shelter landlord for X amount of years. Can you just verify that or not? And then I'd like to advocate for that, because the city owns the county owns I was there for the Lakeside Men's Homeless Shelter, and the government bought those. And if we did it once, as administrations change and council changes, will that discussion and decision possibly made? Don't know, but I want to make sure and listen to how protected you are, and if you're not, talk about having you protected.
Yeah, I mean, back in 2003, we agreed to take ownership. And as you said, we've gotten, scrutiny over the years. But we are committed to owning it long-term if that's, what is in the best interest for everybody. But I will say that, there definitely is risk just based on it, being a shelter, insurance, just costs for utilities, et cetera, et cetera. So, but the county has consistently provided us an operating contract every year.
That's what I'm
So,
saying. It's not you,
Yeah.
I'm talking about
Yeah.
us.
Right.
Leaving you high and dry. You have
Right.
two buildings, it's part of your mission, and all of a sudden we say, you know what, we're buying our own building, we got $100 million, we'll put something really fancy
Chairman.
up, and then you two, or your entity is like, that didn't really work too well for us.
Right.
So I'm trying to get that,
Right,
start that discussion on protections.
Mr. Chairman, those of us who are a variety of housing provider, understand that there are a significant number of things that drive people to homelessness: domestic violence, mental health issues, disabilities. Those are three of the top ones that come to my mind from having been involved with housing since I didn't know what housing was. And that there are a variety of steps in that process. The real job is in people like you and I who are maturing as elected officials, making sure that the rookies like our colleague sitting to my right, Meredith, understand the importance of housing for people who are fragile in the system, housing for those who are low income, housing for those who are hardworking, working class people, and owning a home of their own just becomes out of reach for them. So there are all these nuances, and the elected officials being committed to working with providers like this, they protect themselves by setting up an LLC for everything, so it has a separate legal entity, and they try and build reserves for the tough years, and they try and get financing that's a low interest rate or a longer term or both of those together. But the big deal is people like you and me staying committed to our constituents.
Absolutely, but
So if the gospel is not preaching to them, they're already saved. It's us preaching to the people we want to have come behind us and serve as elected officials.
Absolutely, but that's just if the county says we're going and buying our own building, and I'm going to repeat myself, I don't think that's fair to you. So the chairwoman will chat with her, and then we'll work with this administration. I know the executive is absolutely committed to taking care of all the Cuyahoga Countyans, but in particular, the homeless folks that have been struggling for a long time.
I have a comment.
Absolutely, madam.
Just a quick comment. And thank you, Councilwoman, Vice President Stevens. And so I tend to do more listening than talking because I respect the experience of all of my colleagues. And as you were talking about length of stay, I thought about the fact that Ms. Lou is not here. And thought she might be here for this conversation today, but I thought about something that she said, and I wanted to thank you for your intentional focus on inclusivity in this design, especially as it relates to people with disabilities and mobility issues. And something she said during public comment made me want to say this. Don't forget about the higher toilets.
Oh, that's funny. I forgot
Okay.
about that.
Yeah.
That is beautiful. What a way to end it.
I'd like to make a motion.
Absolutely.
Second?
There you go. And it's
Second reading?
expedited, so it.
Director?
Second reading?
I'm going second reading no matter what. So there's for second reading, under suspension to the full council, there's been a motion, there's been a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ordinance number or resolution number R2023-0089 will be referred. Thank you very much, Eden, and we will continue partnering with you. And lastly, we have the clerk reading the last one.
Resolution 2023-0090, authorizing amendments to agreements and contracts with various providers for various programs and services for the Cuyahoga County Fatherhood Initiative for the period April 1st, 2021 through March 31st, 2023, to extend the time period to March 31st, 2024, and for additional funds in the total amount not to exceed $825,500.
Again, David Merriman on behalf of the Department of Health and Human Services, as we're back to levy funding and ongoing services, I'll let Marcos introduce this, and I know we're joined today by Al Grimes, the Director of the Fatherhood Group, and as well as several providers, but I'll ask Marcos and Al to manage the presentation.
Good afternoon again. Marcos Cortez with Health and Human Services on behalf of the Fatherhood Initiative. Again, the Fatherhood Initiative seeks to provide high-quality, innovative programming for custodial and non-custodial fathers in Cuyahoga County that will allow every child to grow up with a loving, nurturing, and involved father or father figure. The programming focuses on building the parenting skills of fathers, alleviating barriers to father involvement with their children, preventing premature fatherhood, and/or increasing public awareness of the critical role the fathers play in the lives of their children. Through these 11 programs funded, we provide services to over 5,900 fathers and teens each year. Again, we have Al Grimes, who can speak specifically on each of the different programs that we offer through the Fatherhood Initiative.
Thank you, Mr. Al Grimes. You don't have to talk about all of them. Just tell us
Yeah, no, thank you.
your association
And
with the fatherhood.
Yeah, I've been the administrator of the Fatherhood Initiative since its inception. And what we try to do is make sure that we fund programs that help fathers meet both the financial and the emotional needs of their children. That's why you'll see a variety of programs, from boot camp for new dads to job training and placement to prevention of premature fatherhood, to working with teens about not becoming a dad. So, the reason we say that is because you can be there all day financially, buying the new things and providing money on a regular basis, but fathers have to be there emotionally as well. And that's where the parenting classes and some of the other things come into play. So we want to surround parents with the needs to supply both of those areas. The other thing that I'd like to emphasize is that what we do is we provide programming for every father in Cuyahoga County. You just have to be a dad that wants assistance and be a better dad. It's not a minority program, it's not a white program, it's not a poor program, it's not a rich program. Every dad that needs assistance in becoming a better dad, we provide them with. That's why we're talking about boot camp for new dads. We're talking about, nobody has a playbook on how to be a parent or a new father. Well, the boot camp for new dads teaches you about how to hold a baby safely, how to make sure that the child isn't susceptible to infant mortality or shaken baby syndrome. So every dad needs those kind of things. So we have basically 4 goals: to promote the importance of fathers being involved in their child's lives, get the message out there regularly, make sure that fathers, when they come to the county, are treated in a father-friendly manner, and they're treated the same way as a mom when a mom comes to services. And then the third thing I talked about was making sure that we provide the programs. And then the fourth thing, we host an annual fatherhood conference to celebrate healthy father-child relationships, because we know there's a lot of dads out there doing exactly what they need to be doing, but we don't talk about that as much as we talk about the other dads that are out there. As a matter of fact, we just received a grant to have our 17th annual fatherhood conference. which will be held on June 16th of this year. The St. Luke's Foundation and Dollar Bank have been long-term partners with us in providing this conference, and we really, really appreciate the assistance that they have given us over the years, obviously along with the county council and the county executive. So we really appreciate it. And in summer we fund about, we serve about 6,000 fathers through our funded programs. We have another 500 that we serve through the Fatherhood Conference. Through some community grants, we probably serve another 2,000. And then last year, we had 18,000 fathers that participated in our Fathers Walk to School. So last year, we touched about 25,000 fathers throughout the county through all of our programs. So that's a summary of what we do. Why we do it, we know when fathers are involved, children are less likely to drop out of school, less likely to do drugs, less likely to commit suicide. When both parents are involved, children live a more positive and productive life. So that's the background for the Fatherhood Initiative.
Thank you. Your caring and humbleness oozes out of you, and taking this on. Boot camp doesn't sound fun.
You know, it's interesting. A lot of fathers go reluctantly because their wives say, hey, you're going to that boot camp. But when they come out of it, they say, man, this is the best experience that I ever had. I didn't know it was going to be this much fun.
But I like how you call it boot camp, because you got work,
boot camp, yes, right. You have to strap on your boots and be ready, to have maybe some accidents happen.
Just on a reflection, the two gentlemen that I had the privilege of working with for many, many years that have been the champion of the fatherhood on the elected side has been Councilman Kevin Conwell and Peter Lawson Jones. They've been with you for the get-go. They've had active roles in this, and I just want to give them a mini shout-out.
When Peter came to the county as county commissioner, he had been involved with the state commission on fatherhood in Columbus when he was in the legislature there. He brought the same passion to Cuyahoga County as he had there. And Kevin had worked previously on some fatherhood programming through the Center for Families and Children. So he had been around. And one other thing I wanted to announce is that we have two of our providers here today. Robin Smalley is from Towards Employment, and Dr. Brian Moore is from Passages. So I want to acknowledge those guys that they're in the room today.
Good. I have 5 questions from our chairwoman, and I don't know if you're going to be able to answer them all because it's technical stuff. Are payments for all of your providers up to date, and are there any past due invoices?
I think we talked about this earlier today, that the whole decertification and first certification process, what it does.
It's getting addressed.
It's been an issue, so we do have some providers that we need to get caught up on.
And we're going to take
along with the fact that currently, while you're in the process of doing an amendment, it limits you from being able to make payments. So that's one of the reasons why we want to get this done as quickly as possible so we can get all of the providers caught up.
Cool. Can the master contract move forward if there are missing items from any of the providers?
Actually, we don't have any missing items.
Thank you very much. How many individuals were served in the various programs?
I started talking about, well, for example, about 5,000, 1,800.
You said about 25 altogether.
Through the direct programs, about 6,000. But then when you take in the special events that we have throughout
You're growing.
About 25,000 people that we touch during a year.
Thank you. Do any of these services qualify for Title IV reimbursements? I have no.
That's, I'm not as familiar with Title IV as I should be. I'm
not holding you responsible for that one at all.
So Title 40 funding is funding that's used to support children who are involved with the child welfare system.
Do they qualify? That's the only question.
We would have to look. I think what's critical about 40 is the child has to be either an imminent risk of going into custody or they have to be in custody. And there has to be a case plan. There has to be.
You'll get back to us on the specifics as much as you can. Thank you very much. Do you still have to make an appointment with the Children's Museum, or can you visit at any time?
No, the Children's Museum, what we have is the Children's Museum. What we did, we had it open throughout the month during COVID, but now it's open on a regular basis for fathers and their children.
Those are all the prepared questions. Are there questions from the council colleagues on the dais? Councilwoman Meredith Turner,
Thank you, through the chair.
District 9.
Well, first of all, good afternoon. Mr.
Thank
Grimes,
you.
you've been doing
Ms.
this
Turner.
forever, and I appreciate your dedication in this space. I've had an opportunity to attend the conference on many occasions when I was with the office of U.S. Senator Sherrod Brown, so this was something that he has also supported. I got a text message from a friend who said, I'm a graduate of the County Daddy Boot Camp, and I have nothing but love for this program. Are these boot camps in specific locations?
We have them at 9 hospital locations. They're at the
9
Cleveland
hospital
Clinic, they're at
locations.
Metro, they're at Womankind, there's 7. All of the hospitals have a boot camp for new dads program associated with them.
Perfect. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Dale? Well, I can tell you, keep up the great work. 5 words. And we're very thankful that you're part of us, and I can't see anybody that does it better. So, a second reading?
Thank you, everybody. Yes,
Second
please.
reading? I'm going to have mine. You want yours,
Yes,
Meredith?
I
And
do.
Dale.
Yes.
We're all adding our names, if you don't mind, Madam Clerk. And second reading under suspension. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Since we have a majority, we're going to move it to second reading under suspension, the next council meeting.
Thank you very much.
I'll see you later. Is there any miscellaneous? Hearing none, I want to thank everybody for their participation, both from the audience and from our dais.
Oh, you hit it.
I'm going to unhit it. Back in session.